My name is Jamar Buchanan, and this is the Highest and Best Man podcast. In this episode, I want to talk about identity and this pilgrimage that I took to Africa. I took the trip to Africa because as I was really starting to study and try and understand purpose, I came up with a formula that really seemed to comprise what most people who in books or in talking to people in conversations really kind of encapsulated what purpose kind of consisted of. And it had a spiritual element to it. There's a spirituality aspect to purpose for sure. There's something about ability. And then there's this third part about identity that I came to understand purpose to commonly, have within it. And that identity part has two parts to it. I think there's this inherent part of your identity that you have within you that you see yourself as. And then I also think there's this part of identity that is, your identity within the context of your environment. And it was that part that sort of in the context of my environment that really sparked or fueled the pilgrimage to Africa. And that began in a trip previous when I was living in Colombia for about a month. And I was living in Colombia and it was my first time there. And I was running into and seeing all these, Black Colombians that for all intents and purposes looked like me, but they spoke fluent Spanish and they could tell I wasn't Colombian, but I was, Black as well. And it was a very big eye-opening experience for me that to this day I'll never forget. And that really gave me a sense of like, whoa, like I, as a Black person, have a lived experience that's, for the most part, largely consists of my time living in America. And in the U.S., it's one thing to be a Black person, but when you step outside of that bubble, you get a completely different experience and context for how and who you are relative to the environment that you're in. And that was the first time that I felt like it was a good thing to be Black. I've been places where I felt like it was a problem to be a person of color or Black. I've been places where it was not a problem for me to be Black, but I'd never really felt like it was a good thing for me to be Black until I went to Colombia and I had these people running up to me saying, "Oh, mi color," and just like really just talking to me and relating to me in this like really just embracing and loving way. And that was the part that really started the idea of taking a pilgrimage and going to Africa. And I'd done my ancestry and got a sense of my, African makeup and where my ancestors initially come from on the continent. And so I got the idea to put together a pilgrimage where I would visit different regions of Africa and really explore the idea of identity and what it really means outside of my environment of an African American to be me. And when I did this, I put it together to go to different places and spaces. And, going into it, I was really excited about this trip. I really wanted to do it, but I did have some concerns based on a previous experience in college when there was this whole fiasco one year, like, maybe my last year or second to last year in college where, there were the African-American students and the Africans who were students at school. And it kind of got into the daily paper where there was some sort of just like riff. I don't even know where it began, but my takeaway from it more or less was that the African students more or less saw the African-Americans as sort of less than and as, pardon my language, just bastardized versions of people from the continent. And I was really concerned going into it, like how well I would be received by my brothers and sisters on the continent once I went there based on my experience in the US. And so, I had that apprehension going into it, but I would say that after getting there, it couldn't have been further from it. I loved my trip and the experience that it gave me. It gave me a deeper sense of who I am, the role that I play within our culture and our society. The importance and as I was going around and I was sharing with them like why I was there and what I was there for, I'm here. I told them like I got this project that I'm working on. It's called Highest and Best Man. It's related to purpose, and my idea is to create more purpose within Black men, and I want to really like drive that message home and get that out. Everyone I met, they didn't know me from Adam, but they were so supportive and helpful and just really giving me the time of day and really their own personal stories and takes on things and experiences really helped me in fulfilling, what I saw in that pilgrimage. And I just can't overstate. I took the trip. I went to Kenya. I was in Nairobi. I went to South Africa. I was in Johannesburg. I went to the Eastern Cape of South Africa and also went to Cape Town on the Western Cape. And I, made it my mission to just do as much, interacting with people, talking to people. I talked to a bunch of people from the continent as well while I was there, who weren't there, but who, were born in different places. And I talked to as many people as I could. I talked to, this one brother who was from Uganda on my flight from Nairobi to Johannesburg. He gave me a great story about how he, being from Uganda, made it his mission 20 years prior to get to South Africa to just really change his life and his whole, existence and his experience that he knew he would have were he to stay in Uganda. I had a driver when I was in Nairobi, a brother named James, who, really kind of like showed me around, not only the city, but really just like let me in on his life and his experience as an African. And I talked to people in, Johannesburg. I was hosted by some great friends of mine that I met here in the States that, live in Johannesburg. I went around on safari with them in Eastern Cape. I traveled to Cape Town, and I was talking to any and everybody I could in restaurants, bars and clubs, out in the street, you name it. I was really just sort of soaking it up. And no matter where I was, whether it was Nairobi, whether it was Eastern Cape, Western Cape, Joburg, you name it, what I found is that everywhere I went, no matter who I was talking to, up, down, left, right, middle, you name it, there is so much love and appreciation from our brothers and sisters on the continent for those of us here in the U.S. And when I say that, I don't mean that just sort of like, in the general universal love, everyone loves each other sense. I mean that in the sense that we have a very vital role as African Americans within the Black diaspora and the Black culture for the others within that culture. There is a sense of love and reverence. And our role cannot be overstated. There is just, our wins are their wins. Our losses are their losses, and they feel them too. I mean, if you just take some time to look back to years prior when, things were really kicking off in 2020 and, during all these Black Lives Matter protests, think about the last time you as an African American was involved in anything with respect to any other nation's people, especially if they were Black, as a movement or activity. Now think about what it means that you had Black Lives Matter protests in all these different countries in the world based off of events happening here in the US. There's clearly an eye towards us here and what's going on here. And what happens to us here has ramifications and impacts the beliefs and perceptions of our brothers and sisters elsewhere, whether it be in Africa on the continent or in France or you name it. It doesn't really matter, I think, where you look, across the world. Our place as African Americans is a solemn and sacred one in terms of the responsibility that we hold. And I'm not saying that you need to live your life for someone else, but I am saying that you and the way you live your life has an impact on someone else. And whether or not you carry that as important or not, it is there, it's true, and it is present. And, I got a lot out of that trip. I saw myself in a whole new light. I saw my role as a Black man, as an African American man, differently. I think that the stakes that we have as a people, and I'm talking about the whole diaspora, whether you're on the continent or not, are pretty high. And whether you are James from Nairobi, or you are my brother Julius from Uganda, or you're Jamar from Chicago, as a Black person, you seek and look for connection and community. If you have not been to the continent, I highly recommend it. It is the type of experience that will likely change your perspective and how you see yourself. If there was one thing that I would want you to take away from this, is that just know and understand that, you may be from a struggle situation here in the States. You may be from something that isn't ideal or great, but from that, you can do so much. And you have so many people who want you to be you and to make it and to win, that don't even know your name and whose names you may never know, but they exist and they are real. I was so inspired by that, my desire is to go back many more times. I desire to go visit, eastern part of Africa. I want to go everywhere in Africa, but it is a beautiful country. It is a beautiful continent. and it is a beautiful land of people that have just so much reverence and love for us. And I highly recommend any person of color, to take a trip, any black person to really, resonate with who you are, back to the continent. It's called the motherland for a reason. It is the birthplace of humanity and civilization. And it is a beautiful place in space. I highly recommend you take that time to just really get outside of the environments in which you're accustomed, whether you be in Colombia, Chicago, you name it. It's good to get out of your environment and see yourself in a different light, in a different context, to have a greater sense of yourself and who you are. And, that was a lot of what I got from that trip. I can't wait till the world opens back up and things get normal again so I can go back. And so that's it. I mean, I don't want to keep going on about it, but I would say this, as you seek to understand your own purpose and your role in life, really just, whatever spiritual path you follow, whatever religion you believe in, that's all up to you. Whatever abilities God has granted you and you have that you want to hone, that is yours as well. But really take the time to understand your identity, understand who you are inherently, but understand who you are in the context of your environment and the limits that may place or the lens that puts on you, and really seek to understand that from a fuller perspective versus the one in which you're currently existing. That was what I got out of my trip, and it was a phenomenal time and experience. I highly recommend it. And so feel free to share this video with anyone else who would find the message valuable. And always, if you feel like it, subscribe, do all those fancy things, follow, yada, yada. Appreciate it. Thank you. And God bless.